to this, man.
Because that's an insult. All the work I put in, you don't name them people at the...
Shaquille O'Neal just slammed the brakes on Kevin Durant's GOAT conversation, and he did it without hesitation. For years, KD's name has been pushed into that rare air alongside legends like Michael Jordan and LeBron James. 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, and one of the purest scorers basketball has ever seen. Nobody denies that. But then Shaq stepped onto his podcast and completely shut the door on the idea that Durant belongs in the greatest of all-time tier, and when Shaquille O'Neal speaks, people pay attention. This is a 4-time champion who dominated an entire era and changed how teams built their rosters. His opinions carry weight because he's lived through the pressure, the championships, and the expectations that come with true greatness. Shaq made his stance crystal clear. Kevin Durant is not in the GOAT conversation. Not even close. Instead, he placed KD in a completely different category, a group filled with incredible talent, amazing skill, and unforgettable highlights, but not quite the untouchable level occupied by names like Jordan and LeBron. Coming from someone with Shaq's resume, that wasn't just criticism. It sounded like a final verdict. But what makes this even more intense is the fact that this tension between Shaq and KD didn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. This rivalry has been simmering for years, and it all traces back to 2017 in the most unexpected way. Back then, during an episode of Shaq'd in a Fool Shaq was doing what he always does, laughing at ridiculous on-court mistakes and clowning players for bad moments. One of the main targets was JaVale McGee. Most fans treated it like harmless entertainment, but Durant didn't see it that way at the time. KD and JaVale were teammates on the Golden State Warriors, and Durant publicly defended him. KD called Shaq's behavior childish and unnecessary. But he didn't stop there. In later interviews, Durant went directly at Shaq's game itself. No sugarcoating. No holding back. KD pointed to Shaq's missed free throws, awkward airballs, blown layups, and lack of outside shooting ability. According to Durant, Shaq's dominance came mostly from physical size and strength rather than skill. KD basically argued that Shaq wasn't highly skilled, was just bigger and stronger than everyone else. And the moment those comments landed, the relationship completely shifted. What started as jokes on television suddenly turned into real tension between 2 all-time greats from different generations, both with massive pride and completely different views on what basketball greatness actually means.
He free throw shooter, he missed dunks, he airball free throws. He can't shoot. He couldn't shoot outside the paint. He's bigger than everybody. He had no skills, but he was bigger and stronger than everybody. And he's still a great player. But you had your flaws too.
At that point, Kevin Durant still hadn't won a championship, yet he was publicly criticizing a 4-time NBA champion in Shaquille O'Neal. That takes serious confidence. KD was calling out Shaq's weaknesses while still trying to prove he could carry a team to the top himself. And in the basketball world, that's dangerous territory to step into. Because Shaq wasn't about to let those comments slide. In an interview with Sports Illustrated, Shaq fired back with one of the coldest responses of the entire feud. He looked directly at KD's place in basketball history and basically told him, "You ain't one of us." That line hit hard because Shaq wasn't just talking about talent. He was talking about a different level of basketball legacy, the inner circle reserved for players who dominated entire eras, carried franchises through pressure, and built championship resumes without questions attached to them. Shaq, KD's skill was never the issue. Nobody doubts Durant can score with anybody in NBA history. The problem, in Shaq's eyes, was where and how those championships happened. That's what made the tension personal. Shaq comes from a generation where superstars were expected to build through battles, survive failure, and eventually conquer the league as the unquestioned leader of their own dynasty. So when KD joined the Golden State Warriors after losing to them in the playoffs, many former players saw it differently than fans did. And Shaq clearly never forgot him. There's a difference between being an all-time great talent and being part of the untouchable GOAT tier. One earns admiration. The other earns basketball immortality, and according to Shaq, Durant never crossed that line.
O'Neal told Golliver, quote, "He can't talk to me like that. He may think he does and he's sticking up for his teammate. He's a great player, but you ain't in the club yet. You're on the outside in line with Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. You're not in the club with me and those championship guys. That's why I tweeted him, mind your business."
No hesitation at all. Shaquille O'Neal went even further and grouped Kevin Durant alongside legendary players who never fully reached the championship mountaintop, names like Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. All-time greats, Hall of Famers, players with unbelievable careers. But still missing that final layer of basketball immortality. The message was direct: talent alone doesn't get you into the GOAT club. But there's a deeper side to this story that most people miss. Shaq wasn't just taking shots at KD. He was speaking from a completely different basketball mentality. Back when Shaq was young, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar told him almost the exact same thing. Kareem made it clear that Shaq hadn't earned a place among the all-time elite yet. And Shaq didn't argue about it. He didn't complain publicly or fight with fans online. He took it personally and went to work. Kareem's message was simple: statistics mean nothing without championships, so Shaq responded the only way he believed mattered: be dominating the league and collecting 4 rings. No endless debates. No social media battles. Just results. That's where the generational divide starts showing itself. When legends like Shaq and Barkley questioned the value of KD's championships, Durant didn't answer the same way older stars did. Instead of letting everything play out on the court, the conversation kept moving online. Twitter arguments, burner account drama, back and forths with random fans, even debates with teenagers in comment sections. KD told older players to move on, but that only made the contrast even louder. To Shaq's generation, criticism was fuel. To KD's generation, criticism became conversation. And to really understand why this tension exploded, you have to go back to May 2016. The Oklahoma City Thunder were up 3-1 against the 73-win Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Durant was averaging huge numbers. Russell Westbrook was attacking non-stop. They had already eliminated the 67-win San Antonio Spurs. Everything was lined up perfectly. One more win, and they were headed to the finals. Then everything collapsed. Game 5. KD drops 40 points, but the Thunder still lose. Game 6 in Oakland. Durant scores 29, but shoots 10-for-31 when the pressure peaks. Warriors survive again. Game 7. KD puts up 27 points on decent shooting, but it still isn't enough to finish the job. Across those final 3 games, Durant and Westbrook combined for 30 turnovers. 30. Golden State completed one of the greatest comeback series in NBA history. And even though the Warriors later lost to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the finals, the narrative around KD had already changed forever. Because only 2 months later, Durant shocked the basketball world. Instead of returning to Oklahoma City for revenge, he joined the same Warriors team that had just eliminated him. The exact team he was 1 win away from beating. That single move changed how many fans and former players viewed his legacy forever, and that's why Shaq's criticism hits so hard. Deep down, this isn't just random trash talk. It's about what different generations believe greatness is supposed to look like. Shaq has explained it clearly himself: I built dynasties. KD joined one. That's the core of the argument. Shaq helped build the Orlando Magic into contenders. Then he went to the Los Angeles Lakers and became the centerpiece of another dynasty alongside Kobe Bryant. Wherever Shaq went, the franchise revolved around him. In Shaq's eyes, KD stepped into a machine that was already operating at championship level. And then things exploded again in January 2023. KD fired a shot at Shaq on Twitter after Shaq admitted on TV he didn't know much about a Lakers trade target. Durant posted, "Shaquille don't know ball." That was enough. Shaq immediately fired back and dropped the line that spread everywhere across NBA media: respect the bus driver. For words that hit like a dunk in traffic. The meaning was obvious. Shaq sees himself as someone who drove championship teams. In his eyes, KD rode along with one that already existed. Durant tried to laugh it off afterward, joking, "Damn, I got cooked for asking a simple question." But by then, the internet had already grabbed onto the moment, and the feud only got bigger from there. But that response didn't really land the way KD probably wanted it to. Because every time a legend steps into the conversation with him, things seem to get quiet fast afterward. And when people start looking at the numbers, the debate gets even tougher to ignore. With the Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant looked almost unbeatable. In the playoffs, the Warriors went 38-10 with KD on the floor. 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs. One of the most dominant stretches the league has ever seen, and no argument there. But outside Golden State, the story starts looking very different. Since leaving the Warriors, Durant's playoff record has barely stayed above .500. No championships in Oklahoma City Thunder after the collapse against Golden State. Disappointing exits with the Brooklyn Nets. A sweep against the Boston Celtics. More playoff disappointment after joining the Phoenix Suns. And when the same pattern keeps appearing over and over, people stop calling it bad luck. That's why the criticism keeps getting louder. When Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green were beside him, everything clicked perfectly. Durant looked unstoppable in that Warriors system. But once that structure disappeared, the championships disappeared too. That's the heart of Shaq's argument. Big numbers alone don't automatically make someone the unquestioned leader of a dynasty. Now compare that to Shaquille O'Neal. 4 championships, all built through completely different journeys. Finals runs with Penny Hardaway in Orlando. A three-peat alongside Kobe Bryant in Los Angeles. Another championship with Dwayne Wade in Miami. Everywhere Shaq went, he was viewed as the centerpiece. The force teams had to build around. The player setting the tone. That's why older legends see the comparison differently to players like Shaq and Charles Barkley. Greatness isn't just about rings. It's about how those rings were earned. Their generation followed a completely different code. When Michael Jordan couldn't get past the Detroit Pistons, he didn't join them. He came back stronger and beat them. When Shaq struggled against Jordan's Bulls, he didn't try teaming up with MJ. He created his own path. Durant sees the league differently. His openly said player freedom changed the NBA, and he's not wrong about that. But to many former players, the standard for basketball greatness never changed with it. Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron all faced intense pressure in their eras, and eventually led teams to championships as the unquestioned face of the journey. That's why the bus driver line still follows KD everywhere. And now, at 36 years old, the pressure around Durant's legacy feels heavier than ever. Nobody questions his talent. Nobody questions the scoring ability, efficiency, shot making, or skill level. KD is one of the greatest offensive players basketball has ever seen, but GOAT conversations are about more than talent. They're about leadership, pressure, resilience, carrying the weight when everything starts collapsing around you. And according to many legends from older generations, Durant still hasn't fully answered those questions outside of Golden State. That's why Shaq's comments hit differently. He isn't saying KD wasn't great. He's saying there's another level beyond greatness, a level reserved for players who built dynasties, carried franchises through chaos, and finished the journey as the unquestioned leader. And in Shaq's eyes, KD still hasn't crossed that line. Now the conversation becomes even bigger, because this debate isn't really about stats or highlights anymore. It's about what basketball greatness is supposed to mean in the first place. Kevin Durant's legacy debate just exploded again, and this time it came from one of the loudest voices in basketball history. Shaquille O'Neal completely shut down KD's case for GOAT status, and he didn't hesitate for a second. For years, Kevin Durant has pushed his name into that elite conversation alongside Michael Jordan and LeBron James. 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, and one of the smoothest scoring packages the game has ever seen. Nobody questions the talent. But when Shaq jumped on his podcast, he tore that whole argument apart like it meant nothing. And when Shaq speaks, people listen because his words hit just as hard as those unstoppable dunks he used to throw down. He made one thing crystal clear. KD is not in the GOAT conversation. Not even close. Instead, Shaq placed him in a completely different category, a lane filled with insanely talented players who never quite reached that untouchable top tier. Coming from a 4-time champion who lived through the pressure, the dominance, and the expectations himself, that wasn't just criticism. It sounded like a final verdict. What makes this even more intense is the fact this tension didn't appear overnight. This back and forth between Shaq and KD has been building for years. It really started around 2017 during an episode of Shaqtin' a Full Star. Shaq was clowning JaVale McGee for awkward mistakes on the court, something he'd done to plenty of players before. Most people laughed it off, but KD wasn't having it. Since JaVale was his teammate on the Warriors at the time, Durant stepped in publicly and called Shaq childish, but it didn't stop there. KD later took direct shots at Shaq's game itself. He talked about the missed free throws, the airballs, the lack of range, and argued that Shaq's dominance came mostly from size rather than skill. In KD's eyes, Shaq wasn't versatile enough outside the paint. And just like that, a casual disagreement turned into full-blown tension between two generations of superstars. The wild part? KD was doing all this before winning a championship. A player still trying to prove he could lead a team to the top was openly critiquing one of the most dominant champions the sport had ever seen. That's bold territory. And Shaq absolutely wasn't letting it slide. In an interview, he hit KD with one of the coldest responses of the entire feud. He basically told him, "You ain't one of us." Then Shaq grouped KD with legends like Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. Incredible players. Hall of Famers. But still missing that one thing that separates greatness from immortality in basketball culture. Rings earned as the unquestioned leader. The message was obvious. Talent alone doesn't get you into the inner circle, but underneath all the trash talk, there's actually a deeper mindset clash happening here. Shaq has explained before that when he was younger, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar challenged him in the same exact way. Kareem told Shaq he wasn't truly elite yet. Shaq didn't argue online, didn't fire off responses, and didn't complain. He took it personally, went back to work, dominated the league, and eventually came back with 4 championships. That was his answer. Fast forward to KD's era, and the response looked completely different. Whenever Shaq or Barkley questioned Durant's legacy, KD often took it straight to social media. Burner account accusations, arguments with fans, debates in comment sections, direct replies to critics, the whole thing became public. And for older players, that difference matters. To them, the old code was simple. You settle it on the court. To really understand why Shaq keeps hammering this point, you have to go back to 2016. The Oklahoma City Thunder were up 3-1 against the 73-win Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. KD and Russell Westbrook looked unstoppable. They had already taken down the Spurs and were 1 win away from the finals. Then everything collapsed. The Warriors stormed back and completed one of the greatest comebacks in NBA history. A few months later, KD made the decision that changed his entire legacy forever. Instead of trying to beat Golden State the next season, he joined them. The same team that had just eliminated him. That move completely split the basketball world. Some people saw it as smart career management. Others saw it as avoiding the challenge instead of overcoming it. And that's exactly why Shaq's criticism keeps landing so hard years later. Shaq has said it directly before. "I built dynasties. KD joined one." That's the line that defines this entire debate. Shaq points to Orlando, then Los Angeles, then Miami. Everywhere he went, he became the centerpiece. The force everything revolved around. KD, meanwhile, stepped into a Warriors system that was already rolling before he arrived. Things exploded again in 2023 when KD tweeted "Shaq don't know ball" after Shaq admitted he wasn't familiar with a Lakers trade target. Shaq fired back immediately and dropped the line that's followed KD ever since, "Respect the bus driver." For words that changed the conversation overnight. The meaning was brutal. Shaq was saying there's a difference between driving a championship team and riding along with one that already exists. And ever since then, that label has stuck to KD every time playoff conversations start heating up. The numbers are what make the debate even messier. During his time with Golden State, KD looked unstoppable. Championships, finals MVPs, deep playoff runs. But outside Golden State, the story changes. Finals loss in OKC. Second-round collapse in Brooklyn. Sweeps against Boston. Early exits in Phoenix. That pattern is why critics keep asking the same question. Can KD truly carry a franchise from start to finish as the unquestioned leader? Not just as the finisher, but as the foundation itself, and that's really what this debate has become about. Not talent. Not scoring ability. Nobody doubts any of that. The argument is about leadership, pressure, resilience, and whether KD can lead a team through adversity without leaning on an already built dynasty around him. Compare that to the names he's chasing. Jordan had to break through the Pistons. Kobe fought through years of criticism after Shaq left. LeBron faced non-stop pressure and expectations every single season. That's the standard KD is being measured against. The truth is, KD's story still isn't finished. That's what makes this entire conversation so fascinating. One championship run as the undeniable leader could flip the entire narrative overnight. One dominant postseason where there are no questions left. That's all it would take, because in the end, the bus driver label isn't something you claim with interviews or tweets. It's something you prove when everything is on the line. Until that moment happens, the debate isn't going anywhere. Now the pressure feels louder than ever. Every playoff run matters. Every big game matters. Because when KD's career is finally over, the conversation won't just be about points or highlights. It'll be about how history remembers him. So now the question becomes simple. Does Kevin Durant still have one legendary chapter left to silence everybody? Or has the story already been written?